The word Arctic is derived from the astronomic term used by the ancient Greeks to indicate the trajectory of the Great Bear constellation. Arctos is bear in Greek, around the pole star. It was only later used to refer to the geographical band, Arctic Circle, that lies between the North Pole and the extreme north of the American and Eurasiatic continents. The Arctic region stretches lengthways for about 4,000 miles from the northern regions of Scandinavia across Siberia to the Bering Strait, and from Alaska to Greenland. The winters are long and very cold, with temperatures dropping to 22 degrees Fahrenheit and snow remaining on the ground for 6 to 7 months, melting only in spring. Summers are short and mild. The tundra, the circumpolar ecosystem, is a damp, boggy expanse, short on resources and almost uninhabited. The few peoples that halted in this inhospitable terrain reached it in various waves of migration over the millennia. The Paleo-Siberian peoples, originally from Asia, first occupied the Eurasian tundra about 15,000 years ago, before it was colonized by the Mongolids. Meanwhile, about 10,000 years ago, Mongolid groups, including the Eskimo Aleuts, crossed the Bering Strait that lies between Asia and North America and occupied the coast of Alaska. Although there was a great deal of movement up and down both the Asian and American coasts of the strait, the picture was not uniform. The current Siberian peoples, Chukchi, Koryak, and Idelman, and the Eskimos have hybrid genetics and physical characteristics resulting from the continual mixing of Paleo-Siberian and Mongolid groups. In more recent epochs, Eurasiatic groups like the Sami reached the Arctic. Various finds of weapons and tools prove their presence in Sweden around 4,000 years ago, and in southern Finland perhaps 1,000 years ago. The Sami of northern Scandinavia differ genetically to other groups, being descended from Uralic stock, i.e., the areas surrounding the mountain range that crosses Eurasia from the shores of the Kara Sea in Siberia to the Turgay Taurus north of the Aral Sea. It is therefore possible to distinguish three linguistic families for the populations of the Arctic: Paleo-Asiatic, spoken by the Paleo-Siberian groups; Eskimo Aleut, spoken by the Inuit; and Ural-Altaic, spoken by the Lapps. Despite their linguistic differences, The similarity of their habitat means these groups share many cultural characteristics. The Arctic environment has obliged them to specialize for their survival hunting by land animals, for instance polar bears, and sea mammals, fishing, and further inland breeding of reindeer, the practice of which began to spread through the Eurasian Arctic in the 2nd millennium BC. The extreme winter cold and seasonal variability of the few resources available have obliged the Arctic groups to be nomadic, thereby preventing any permanent social or institutional structures from developing. The communities that they formed were fairly flexible, being composed of small groups of extended families that came together or separated in order to carry out economic activities and which were united by the equal division of resources and cooperation they offered one another in the performance of work tasks. Common to all groups is the use of particular materials to withstand the climate. In general, animal skins were used to make clothes, cover tents, and provide the lining of boats. The kayak, a typical Arctic form of transport, is lined entirely with sealskin, except for a small round hole that fits snugly around the waist of the user, who sits with his legs stretched out before him. The narrow, tapered shape of the light and easily transported kayak is perfectly suited to hunting and fishing in the waters of the Arctic Ocean, for large whale hunting expeditions, or for seasonal migration. The groups use the umiak. These large open boats are about 30 feet in length, lined with sealskin and fitted with rowlocks and wooden cross pieces on which to sit. On land, the means of transport are skis and sleds, the latter used to carry goods and people. Another important cultural element common to all Arctic groups is shamanism, which spread with the human migration from Siberia to northeast Europe, Lapland, and the American coast. The rationale of shamanism lay in hunters' cultural horizon and their vision of the world dominated by animals and the spirits of nature. An Inuit fisherman glides across the water in his single-seat kayak off Quanach in northeast Greenland. Another traditional boat in the circumpolar region is the umiak, the long open hull of which is lined with the skins of seals or sea lions. An umiak is generally used when hunting large animals, as the efforts of several men are required. The myths of the Arctic people are also shamanic in origin. Oral traditions describe the supernatural powers of animals, shamans, and guardian spirits like the polar bear. Different myths lay down prescriptions on how hunting should be carried out, above all on the taboos regarding the protection of certain species of prey, or on the manner in which the remains of killed animals are to be treated. A creature's bones are considered the magical parts of a body, from which the animal can separate and return to its place of origin, and rebirth of the bones is a recurrent shamanic theme. The idea of death and rebirth as a necessary shamanic rite of passage can be traced back to ancient hunting rituals in which the bones of the animals were recomposed so that the animal might be resurrected. Pre-hunt ceremonies among hunting people were of fundamental importance, as were the cult of the polar bear and the propitiatory rites that followed a bear's death among all Arctic peoples. The first accounts of Arctic peoples reached Europe at the start of the 16th century, written by explorers, travelers, and mapmakers, though in fact the earliest knowledge of the ancient Eskimos dates to the discovery of Greenland by the Icelandic Vikings in the 10th century. In later centuries, the circumpolar regions were crossed by fur traders, whalers, and the occasional group of colonists. After the end of the Second World War, countries interested in exploiting the mineral and hydroelectric resources of the Arctic accelerated their industrial development of the area through the militarization and urbanization of particular zones, with the result that the local populations were transformed into ethnic minorities within political and national boundaries. Today, the Inuit or Eskimos are distributed along the northern borders of Russia, the United States, Canada, and Greenland, Denmark. The Sami Laps inhabit the northern areas of Norway, Sweden, Finland, and Russia. The Siberian Arctic is home to a number of different groups, including the Nenets, Samoyeds, Khanty, and Mansi, the Evenk, or Tungus, the Chukchi, and the Koryaks. This section of the book will dwell on the traditional culture of the Inuit, from discussions of the modern daily life of these peoples who are now familiar with computers and satellite technology. The Chukchi will be taken as representatives of the Siberian groups, the language of whom has certain affinities with the ancient Eskimo tongue. Such similarities reflect the continuous interchange between the Chukchi and Asiatic Eskimos, both of which lived in the Chukchi National District. As the only European representative of the Arctic populations, the Sami have had to be included. They too are traditionally fishermen and hunters, but have integrated the breeding of reindeer into their economy in more recent times. Over the last years, the authorities in the American Arctic have attempted to introduce livestock breeding among the Eskimo groups in Alaska so as to provide them with an alternative to the hunting of endangered species of whales. These days, Scandinavian Sami have abandoned the traditional life that centered on nomadic camps, but they take every opportunity to wear their traditional brightly colored clothes embroidered with vivid patterns. A Chukchi child peeps through the window of a brick house in Siberia. The pelt-covered tent, Yoranga, used by his forefathers today, only used by the Chavku, or nomadic herders, who live inland. Join us for more episodes of Arctic Peoples here at Mystic Ashram. Be sure to subscribe for the next episode. Thank you so much for tuning in. Many blessings.